Hi, this is Chris from the Project Management Guide. This video is called How to Communicate Project Risk to Stakeholders. Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about why we need to communicate project risk to people and who we need to communicate it to. And then we're also going to cover, what needs to be communicated, how it needs to be communicated, and some of the common mistakes as well that people make when they're communicating risk. So why do we need to communicate risk then? So the primary objective when we're communicating risk is to communicate the right risks at the right level to the right people. And what we're aiming to do is we're trying to get people to understand what the risk is, how likely it is to happen, and the impact of the risk if it does happen. And we do this so that we can get some help for the project manager, so in order that they can mitigate the risk, so they can either take action themselves or they can plan for the eventuality that the risk might actually happen. So who do we need to communicate risk to on the project? And the answer is pretty much everybody that's involved in the project. So we need to communicate at different levels depending on what the risks are. So we need to sort of prioritise and make sure we're pitching the risk level at the right groups for the right people. So we might talk to stakeholders and communicate our risks to them. We will certainly talk to the project sponsor, so the customer, they really need to understand what the risks are on the project, and they might be able to help you to mitigate some of those risks by taking actions themselves. We need to talk and work with the project teams. We need to work with suppliers and their active part in the project and the risks that they've got. And then we really need to talk to anybody that's involved in the project and the risks that they might have and how they might impact the project. So how does the project manager manage the risk on the project? So they need to keep a risk log and maintain a risk log. And I've done other videos on how to write risk statements and the best way to do that. So it's probably worth checking those out as well. But the project manager is aiming to run with a small number of risks on their project if they can. And they really need to focus on the most important ones. And obviously those are the high likelihood and the high impact ones. And it's better that if they obviously want to try and reduce the risk on your project as much as possible. So it's good to try and work with a small number of risks as you possibly can, sort of 5 to 10 at the absolute most, I would say. And the project manager's role really is to work in mitigating those risks on a daily basis. Typically, they want to update the risk log on a weekly basis. The reason I say weekly is because people forget what the risks are. So if you sort of visit the risk log every 3 or 4 weeks or so, you've sort of forgotten what some of the risks are, or they've been phrased differently. And so it's really important to keep it's really important also to keep your weekly reports up to date. So any risks that you highlight in your weekly report, or if there's a monthly report that might go up to the project board, then you need to keep all of those risks up to date, because people latch onto those. If you don't keep those up to date, people grab hold of those, they look at those risks, and if they're out of date and you've left them in a report that you haven't updated for a few weeks, or that bit of the report you haven't updated your risk, then people they'll latch onto them, and you end up managing things that where the risk has already moved on, you've already mitigated it. So keep it under proper management and up to date. So I'm going to look at some of the common errors and mistakes that people write when they write out their risk statements. As I said, I've covered in another video how to write effective risk statements. But quite often people, project managers or whoever, when they write down risks, they don't get it right quite often. So, and as a program manager, I've had project managers working for me, and I've seen lots of different errors and mistakes that people make. And these are some of the most common mistakes that people make. So quite often people write really vague, really unclear risks. So it's really not clear what the risk is about at all. And sometimes people miss out the likelihood and the impact, or it's unclear, or sometimes they miss it out completely on the risk statement. And sometimes what people do is they bundle several risks together. So it's really hard to work out what the actual risk is. And if you fix one of the risks, then you've still got the other one in there. So it's all a bit of a mess really. So those sort of things need to be fixed in your risk log and your risk statements. And then finally, another really common one is that risks are out of date on the risk log as well. And some more examples here is it's really common for people to miscommunicate. So they communicate at the wrong level or to the wrong people. And it's really important that you pitch your risk when you're communicating it to people. It's really important that you can pitch it at the right level. So it's got to go to the right person at the right level. So sometimes I see this all the time actually. So risks quite often are stated and they're far too technical for the audience. So the people that are reading the risk, they haven't got a clue really what the risk means, what the impact of it is. It's very technical, and so it's really hard to understand whether they need to take notice of that risk or not, really, basically. Another common challenge I see is that risks are stated that have a really low overall rating for the audience. So it's a really low level risk. So really people don't really want to be worrying about, certainly the audience that this is communicated to, they don't want to be worrying about this level of risks. And lots of low-level risks, they really clutter up your risk log, and you end up spending time reviewing and looking at risks that are really low level, and when you should be really focusing on the higher priority tasks. And it's really important that the risks are that you focus on the high impact and high probability risks, because that means that's where you should be spending all of your time, all your mitigation, all of your effort, really, rather than focusing on the small risks, the low priority risks. So I hope this has helped you to understand how better to communicate your risks on your project. So as I said, the primary objective is to communicate the right risks at the right level to the right people, and you're trying to get people to understand what the risks are on the project and how likely they are to happen, and the impact of those risks if they do happen. And it's really important to focus on the really important risks and the high impact and the high likelihood ones. And the project manager's role really is to work on mitigating those risks daily, and make sure you keep your risk logs up to date. Visit them sort of every now and again, and that will just make the project run smoothly, and you'll keep your risks very much under control. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe on the button below. I'd love to hear your comments on how you're getting on with your risk management processes. I've got several more videos on the subject of risk management, so take a look at those. And if you want to find out more information, then please find us at theprojectmanagementguide.com.